In 1950, an earthquake tore through the Peruvian city of Cusco and brought it down. Churches split open, colonial mansions collapsed into the streets, and buildings the Spanish had razed with brick and mortar folded in on themselves. But in the wreckage, one thing hadn't moved: the stone the whole city had been built on top of. Walls and foundations laid without a drop of cement by people who had no iron tools, no wheel, and no written language. The Inca stonework didn't crack, and it had done this before, riding out an even bigger quake 3 centuries earlier in 1650 without a scratch. That stonework is now close to 500 years old, sitting in one of the most violently earthquake-prone places on Earth. Every generation, the ground tries to shake the city apart, and every generation, the oldest part of it refuses to fall. While the newer buildings beside it crack and come down, and here's the detail that turns this from a curiosity into something genuinely unsettling. The Inca didn't survive earthquake country by luck, and they didn't survive it by hiding from the danger. They walked straight toward the most broken, unstable ground they could find, and built there on purpose. To understand why that was genius and not madness, you have to know what actually kills a city in an earthquake. Because it isn't the shaking. The shaking barely touches anyone directly. What kills people is buildings coming down on them, and on a mountainside, something worse: the whole slope letting go and burying everything on it. And this isn't ancient history, it's the same math that kills people now. Across the world's mountain regions, the landslides and earthquake shakes loose still bury whole neighborhoods in a single afternoon, and we spend fortunes trying to hold those slopes in place and lose the fight anyway. The Inca faced the exact same two killers, falling structures and sliding ground, and beat both 5 centuries ago with no steel and no machines. The way they did it is a 500-year-old answer to a problem our engineers are still losing today. Start in Cusco, because it's really 2 cities stacked one on top of the other. When the Spanish conquered the Inca capital in the 1530s, they didn't clear it and start fresh. They knocked the roofs off the Inca buildings and raised their own churches and mansions directly on top of the existing stone, using it as a ready-made foundation. So today, you can see the seam with your own eyes. The bottom few feet of a wall are massive, dark, perfectly fitted Inca blocks, and above that line, the smaller mortar-filled Spanish work begins. There is a temple in the heart of the city, the Coricancha, that the Spanish tore down to build a grand church on its foundation. Twice, in 1650 and again in 1950. The ground heaved, the church above cracked apart, and the Inca wall beneath stood there untouched, holding up the ruins of the thing built to replace it. The 1950 quake hit so hard it split the colonial shell open and laid bare the original Inca walls, hidden inside the church for 4 centuries and still standing perfectly true. So what did the Inca know that the empire which conquered them did not? The part everyone notices is the stone itself. Inca builders shaped each block so precisely that it locked against its neighbors with no mortar at all. The walls are held together by nothing but their own weight and the flawless fit between the stones. Some blocks carry a dozen angled faces, each ground to press exactly against the one beside it, and the joints are so tight you still cannot slide a knife blade or a sheet of paper between them. With no brittle mortar to shatter, the stones can give a hair against each other when the ground moves instead of snapping. It's beautiful, and it's clever. But the walls you can photograph are the least of it. The real reason the city survived is 2 things the Inca did that you cannot see at all. And the first one sounds insane. They built on the earthquake faults, on purpose. For years, the biggest mystery about the mountaintop city of Machu Picchu was why the Inca chose that spot. A knife-edge ridge high in the Andes that looks impossible to build on. Geologists now believe the answer is that they chose it precisely because of the danger. The city sits directly over the point where 2 fault lines cross, some of the most fractured, unstable ground in the entire region. To anyone else, that's the last place on Earth you'd found a city. To the Inca, it was the first, because those faults had already done the hardest part of the work. Over thousands of years, the grinding of the earth had shattered the mountain's granite into angular blocks, pre-broken along clean lines, ready to be fitted together with a fraction of the carving. The Inca didn't fight the fault, they mined it. And the more closely you look, the more deliberate it gets. A geologist named Rualdo Menegat spent 11 years mapping the ground beneath the site with satellite and field data, and found that the faults cross under Machu Picchu in a giant X, and that the Inca lined the whole city up with them. The streets, the plazas, the staircases, even individual buildings are oriented along the directions of those faults, as if the city were drawn to match the cracks in the earth beneath it. The same fractures that supplied the building stone also funneled meltwater and rain straight down to the ridge. They didn't just tolerate the fault, they read it, and built the city into its grain. And the same broken ground handed them the second, deeper secret. The one that actually saved the city: water. On a steep mountainside, the thing that turns an earthquake into a graveyard is the slope itself giving way. Shake a mountain full of trapped water, and it slides. So the Inca drained it. Beneath Machu Picchu, out of sight, they built a vast hidden network of underground channels, buried trenches, and stone-packed drainage layers. The engineer who spent decades mapping it, Kenneth Wright, estimated that around 60% of all the construction at Machu Picchu is underground, and counted roughly 130 drainage outlets built into the walls alone, feeding runoff down into deep foundations packed with layered gravel and crushed granite, so water drains straight through the ground instead of collecting in it. Fresh spring water was carried in along a stone channel to a run of 16 fountains, used and then sent on and away. It all pulls mountain rainwater clear of the foundations before it can pool, soak in, and wash the ground out from under the stone. As Wright put it, without good drainage, there would be no Machu Picchu standing today. It keeps the slope drained, and a drained slope holds when the earth shakes. The city everyone travels to see is really the small visible tip of a far larger machine buried in the mountain. And that machine, not the pretty walls, is what has kept it standing for 5 centuries. Even the famous terraces, those great green steps cut into the mountainside, are part of it. They aren't just farmland. Each terrace is a carefully layered sandwich, topsoil over sand, over gravel, over crushed stone, that catches the rain, feeds the crops, drains the excess deep into the mountain, and braces the whole slope against sliding, all at the same time. The Inca turned the entire mountainside into a single structure, and the shapes reinforce everything. Inca walls don't rise straight up, they lean slightly inward, tilting toward the center of the building, which lowers their center of gravity and helps them shrug off a sideways shove instead of toppling. The doors and windows aren't rectangles, they're trapezoids, wider at the bottom, narrower at the top, so the weight funnels down and around each opening, turning the corners that fail first in our buildings into some of the strongest points in theirs. Nothing here is decoration. Every angle is doing a job. Now hold all of that against what they had to work with. No iron or steel tools, no wheel, no draft animals strong enough to haul the giant stones. You can see the sheer scale of the effort on a hill above Cusco at a fortress called Sacsayhuaman, where the Inca stacked stones so enormous they stop you cold. The largest weigh well over 100 tons, some estimates past 200, heavier than 100 cars. And yet, they're fitted to their neighbors with the same paper-thin precision as a garden wall. They shaped blocks like that by hand, pounding them with harder hammerstones, gathered from riverbeds, chipping and grinding and fitting each one by trial and error, lifting it, testing it against the last, taking it back down, and cutting again until it's seated with no gap at all. A single great wall could swallow years of labor, and they could only do it because of what stood behind the workers, an empire. The Inca ran their entire world without money, on a system of labor owed to the state, every able-bodied man giving a set stretch of work each year. And that system could put 20,000 people on one project and keep them there for a generation. The same organized hands laid tens of thousands of miles of stone road across the Andes, strung woven fiber bridges across canyons, and stepped entire mountains into farmland. A city built to outlast earthquakes was just one more thing a civilization of engineers turned out. That is the first half of why nobody builds like this anymore. You cannot buy a whole city carved to this standard. You can only command it with a civilization organized around the effort. The second half is darker. When the Spanish destroyed the Inca Empire, they destroyed the thing that made all of it possible. The organized labor, the master builders, and the knowledge passed hand to hand and never once written down because the Inca had no writing. The exact methods they used to shape stone this hard to this impossible fit, the full logic of the drainage, the reasons behind the sites they chose. Most of it was never recorded, and much of it died with the people who knew it. To this day, engineers and archaeologists travel to these ruins to measure the joints, map the buried channels, and argue over how it was done. We are standing in front of a technology we conquered, buried, and have never fully managed to read back. And we are slowly circling back to their answer. The modern way to stop a mountainside from sliding in an earthquake is strip down the Inca way. Drain it, drill channels and pipes into the slope to pull the trapped water out so the ground can't turn loose and let go. We reached that through geology degrees, computer models, and drilling rigs. They reached it through an empire of hands and an understanding of their own mountain so complete they were willing to bet a city on it. And they have won the bet for 500 years and counting, which is the part that should land hardest. We build our cities the opposite way the Inca did, on the flattest, safest looking ground we can find, in rigid materials that stand against a quake right up until the day they don't. The Inca looked at the most dangerous ground in the mountains, understood exactly how it would try to kill a city, and engineered every piece of the place. The fractured stone, the hidden drains, the terraced slope, the leaning walls, to work with that violence instead of against it. 500 years and countless earthquakes later, the newest thing on that mountain is still the first to crack, and the oldest is still standing.